Let's jump right into this. Right now, completely out of the public eye, billions of dollars are silently pouring into sterile, highly guarded biolabs. And get this capital isn't coming from traditional agriculture. It's coming from tech billionaires, massive venture capital firms, and multinational corporations. We really need to know why. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unravel the mystery behind the rapidly changing landscape of human sustenance.
Which brings us to a massive, almost conspiratorial question. Is this push for lab-grown meat really about saving animals and rescuing our planet from climate change? Or is it the ultimate ploy by tech giants to patent, own, and entirely control the global food supply? Today, we're going to impartially investigate this by looking strictly at the scientific data, the environmental life cycle assessments, and the economic forecasts. We're leaving the rumors behind to see what the research actually reveals.
To understand the sheer scale and the massive financial stakes involved here, just consider this one number: $425 million. That is the amount a single alternative protein startup recently raised. And they did this alongside filing hundreds of specialized patents. Startups in this space are aggressively gathering technical knowledge, plowing vast sums of capital into research, and creating massive barriers to entry. We are literally witnessing what could be a historic transfer of wealth and intellectual property right in the food sector.
And that brings us to the core tension we're exploring today. As a recent report from IPS Food explicitly warns, alternative proteins are concentrating ever greater power in the hands of dominant firms. The deep-rooted fear here? That we might be taking food production away from nature, away from local communities, and handing the very keys to human survival over to a handful of biotech corporations backed by opaque financial players.
Chapter 1. What exactly is cultured meat? So, let's break down the science. The technical term is cellular agriculture. This is the process of growing real animal muscle tissue from stem cells in massive bioreactors, entirely without slaughtering a single animal. Now, the core distinction here is absolutely vital. This is not GMO livestock. Unlike the genetic modification of a living, breathing animal out on a farm, cellular agriculture is about taking living cells and cultivating them into real tissue completely outside of an animal's body.
This relies on what's often referred to as the Tumisto model. It starts with a harmless biopsy. Stem cells are extracted from a live animal, like a pig or a cow. Those cells are then transferred to a bioreactor where they're fed a highly calibrated, nutrient-rich growth medium. Finally, they're transferred onto a structural scaffold to actually help them grow into recognizable meat.
So the crucial point is that this transformation happens in 3 distinct, highly controlled phases to simulate natural muscle development. First, you isolate the stem cells. Second, you proliferate them in the bioreactor so they multiply exponentially. And third, you differentiate them on a scaffold so they stretch out and become organized muscle fibers rather than just a disorganized mush of cells. You're essentially mimicking the biological functions of nature inside a steel tank.
But, as the scientific literature shows, recreating a complex organism in a vat, it's incredibly difficult. Startups are struggling with major technical hurdles, like recreating the complex structures of real meat, think blood vessels, nerves, and intramuscular fat. And more controversially, to make the cells actually grow, laboratories have historically relied on fetal bovine serum, or FBS, which is harvested from the blood of dead calves. It's quite the ethical paradox, right? Relying on animal byproducts for a supposedly slaughter-free product? Add in the massive energy required to run these sterile facilities, and the path to global scale is incredibly steep.
Chapter 2. The Promised Food Utopia versus the Corporate Monopoly Trap. Let's look at the 2 radically different futures being presented to us. On one side of the debate, advocates promise a true food utopia, completely ending the horrors of factory farming, halting the suffering of billions of animals, and drastically lowering agricultural pollution like methane emissions. But on the flip side, we face a potential corporate trap, a future characterized by extreme monopolies, where the very biology of our food is patented intellectual property, leading to the total disruption of traditional farmers.
Ex-ante life cycle assessments for the year 2030 reveal a really stark contrast. Models show that while lab-grown meat significantly reduces the land needed for agriculture, its cumulative energy demand absolutely skyrockets. Keeping those bioreactors at the perfect body temperature, properly aerated, and flawlessly sterile requires a massive, continuous supply of power. The irony here is thick. If that power isn't drawn exclusively from renewable sources, the climate benefits of lab-grown meat could completely vanish in a cloud of fossil fuels.
However, the environmental data regarding physical space simply cannot be ignored.
Cultured meat is incredibly efficient when it comes to land use. It's almost 3 times more efficient at turning crops into meat than even chicken, which is currently our most efficient farm animal. It drastically reduces the physical footprint needed compared to traditional beef cattle. This could theoretically free up vast tracts of land globally for reforestation or biodiversity, fundamentally reshaping the geography of our entire planet.
But here's the economic catch that researchers are warning us about. The extremely high-tech entry barriers for cultured meat create what economists call a winner-takes-all natural monopoly. Because value in this new industry is based on intangible assets, ideas, knowledge, and tech patents, rather than physical land, control is highly likely to concentrate in the hands of a few tech giants who can afford the massive research and development. We're moving from a world where food is grown in the dirt to one where it's locked securely behind corporate firewalls.
And this transition comes with a severe human cost. As the literature notes, the shift to cell-based meat production could entail a significant overhaul of labor in the protein production sector. This means that millions of traditional farmers, farm workers, and agricultural veterinarians could be completely erased from the supply chain. Their livelihoods would be replaced by a much smaller, highly specialized workforce of chemists, cell biologists, and engineers working in urban factories. It raises massive, unanswered questions about a just transition for our rural communities.
Chapter 3. Health, Safety, and the Unknown. When a cell-based dish is plated up, it looks exactly like food, but it raises a profound philosophical and biological dilemma of naturalness versus artificiality. Can a lab-grown, engineered structure of cells provide the exact same complex nutritional matrix as an animal raised in nature? And perhaps more importantly, is this heavily engineered, ultra-processed product truly safe for humans to consume over the course of an entire lifetime?
Well, a joint report by the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Health Organization looked closely at this exact question. They identified several unique hazards and severe regulatory gaps. These include the risk of microbial contamination during cell selection, the dangerous carryover of toxic cryoprotectants used to freeze and store cells, and a very mysterious risk known as genetic drift, where cells constantly multiplying outside an animal's body might mutate or change their behavior in completely unpredictable ways over time. The FAO has actually mapped out how novel inputs are introduced at almost every single phase of production, from the initial biopsy to cell proliferation, all the way to harvesting. We are talking about the introduction of potentially allergenic scaffolds, chemical residues from the growth mediums, and biological byproducts that simply do not exist in traditional butchery. Regulators around the world are currently scrambling to figure out how to even begin testing for these entirely novel hazards.
So it boils down to a massive biological trade-off. We are essentially trading old dangers, like the transmission of zoonotic diseases and common pathogens such as Salmonella and E. coli that regularly plague factory farms, for entirely new, unstudied risks. We are eliminating the slaughterhouse, which is undeniably a huge win for animal welfare, but we're introducing ultra-processed cellular foods with completely unexplored long-term metabolic impacts on the human body.
Chapter 4. Who controls your food?
The scientific and economic data we've reviewed shows us that this technology is neither purely a miracle that will save the world without consequence, nor is it an inherent villain. It is, at its core, a mechanism of unprecedented power. It holds the undeniable potential to drastically reduce animal suffering and free up global land, but it simultaneously consolidates immense control over essential global resources right into the hands of a few private patent holders.
I want to leave you with this chilling question to deeply consider the next time you hear a tech billionaire pitch the utopian future of food. When the meat on your plate has a patent number, and the seeds of our survival are locked inside a corporate server farm, who really controls your life?
It's a tremendous amount to digest, both literally and figuratively. Let me know what you think in the comments. Would you personally eat meat grown in a steel tank? Do you see this as the ultimate scientific progress for humanity, or a slow-motion corporate takeover of our food supply? Drop your thoughts below, and be sure to subscribe for more investigative deep dives into the complex ethics of our technological future. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.